So what happened was is that those banks who were correspondent relationships did their own evaluation. And what they found out was is that the size of their business in the Caribbean not only could not stand the test of risk of being fined, but administratively they were losing money. It's just too small. But the fact is that the Caribbean, the majority of investment came from North America. So when I became Prime Minister, as an example, I called up a couple of the airlines that flew to St. Lucia and said, you know that if we lose our corresponding banking relationship, that St. Lucians and other West Indians would not be able to go online and book an airline ticket. Okay? Cruise ships. Okay? Their guests would not be able to get off the boat and go and buy jewelry. They wouldn't be able to use their credit cards. Right? So all of a sudden those companies, all the brand hotels, the Hiltons, the Marriotts and everybody else, their businesses would collapse in the Caribbean. So once we were able to tap into those companies, we've put a halt on the current situation. But the fact is that the Caribbean, I think, has recognized that we need to buy our own bank in the States. And then also, the problem is really our indigenous banks that are too small to have kept pace with the compliance. The compliance departments in these banks have just mushroomed in size. So what we're proposing to do is to create one compliance department for the Caribbean, which will be funded by international institutions as well as local institutions, and that those indigenous banks now can access those services and pay for them like buying it on a menu. So when they use the service, then they pay for it, rather than having to build it up themselves. So that's how we're dealing with the correspondent situation. Now, because of that, it has affected CIP. And because of the fare, we have ratcheted up our compliance standards in the Caribbean way past anywhere else in the world. So you're 100% right. The background checks that we're doing on individuals coming in is substantially more than any other bank would be doing. So once a person passed that test, because the test is not only on criminal, it's also on financial, that's clean money. They're not accepting that level of due diligence, okay? And therefore wanting to do their own level of due diligence, which is duplicating it. And then some of them are just saying, you know what, for the overall benefit I'm going to get from taking this money, it's just not worth the risk. And we're now going to start working on closing that gap. But one of the quicker ways to be able to resolve the problem is to just start taking deposits and monies in other currencies. So the standard on the US dollar is obviously substantially higher, and then limits where you can get corresponding relationships with. So I know in the case of St. Lucia, we're actively now going to be accepting multiple currencies. We're going to make a determination of what those currencies are. And we think that that will go a long ways. We're also working with our local bank in terms of making sure with our financial regulatory agency. And then the big one really is by creating this sovereign fund, instead of this indigenous bank now having millions of dollars in reserves or in deposits, right, which creates a risk for them, it really is only going to be in there temporarily, and then the money will be put into the sovereign fund. Okay? And that we must satisfy ourselves that we know where the source of funds are, and that we've done the background check, and we know that we're doing that. So, you know, all the questions can be answered. And you know, unfortunately in the world, and particularly when you're small, you tend to overreact because the fear of any fallout is so great on our economy. So I don't fault our financial institutions for what they're doing, but it's our job to continuously work with them and educate them on the background checks. We also have two major financial institutions, our central bank, as well as an international institution that is going to be helping us in terms of how do we strengthen our due diligence and what are the processes that we need to put in place in order to be able to ensure the source of funds.
Your price point when you entered the CIP market in the Caribbean was quite aggressive, and the Caribbean nation states are more or less substitute commodities. Are you not afraid of a race to the bottom in terms of pricing?
No, but the fact is that, as you said, I'm an economist. So price and supply. So if you come into the market and there's somebody who has a particular price point and is selling X number of units, and there's another person at a higher price point selling substantially less, then the price is somewhere between those two. Right? We're the new kid on the block, so one can charge a higher price, but what I found out was the people that are charging the higher price are giving major discounts to the middle agents. And also the developers in the real estate project are giving substantially high number of incentives as well. So the net amount that the state is getting is not far off. So do you want to now just have a price in which it becomes the basic price and then everybody can add on whatever their piece is to that point? So what we saw was the destination that was using that model, meaning having a lower price and allowing that price to be built on with everybody else's commissions. That number was producing a greater number of units.
Okay.
So we have a choice. We can go with a higher price point, spend a lot of money marketing the destination, and we may net off be the same way. Or just come in and say, okay, this is what the price is at the market, let the market set the price, and we move ahead. What we've been saying to the Caribbean is, let's get together. Okay? Because there is very little difference between St. Kitts, Antigua, St. Lucia, Dominica, and Grenada.
Well, if I understand what you're saying correctly, you're suggesting a cartel.
Well, it's not a cartel. We're a cartel already. Because when you get a St. Lucian passport, it gives you access to any one of those OECS countries.
Yes, but you're not fixing prices.
But it doesn't matter. We are fixed. We have the same currency. Right? So we are actually selling citizenship to each other's countries. Right? So we collaborate on healthcare, we collaborate on defense, we collaborate on education, we collaborate on immigration. Right? So the fact is that to me, we should have one program. And what you're getting is access to these 7 countries. So if we don't want to get fully integrated to that extent, then let's agree on some basic principles. And there are discussions that are taking place, and I'm hoping that we can find some conformity in that area, and that would resolve the issue, because it wouldn't just be on pricing, it would also be on due diligence and projects and everything else, and come up with a common program. But until such time, right, I have to react to what the market is saying to me. So we are very anxious to get our sovereign fund off the ground, and we want to be able to seed our sovereign fund as quickly as possible. And so clearly, when I look at what's going on in the market and I see what's being sold, then I have to move. And so right now in the world, as I said to you, I think that the market is going to grow. Now, what's an interesting fact in the Caribbean is when St. Kitts was selling by itself, it was selling X number of units. Now that there's 5 destinations, that number has only gone up slightly. Now you would have expected that the market would have grown even more. So it means if we're fighting over a fixed price, that's where the fear of possibly racing to the bottom can happen. But I think in the last year, given what's taken place with Brexit, what's given with the elections in the United States of America, what's taken place in the Middle East, that we're now seeing that there's an increased demand. And then now what we're doing is we're actually broadening the scope of things that we can sell. Headquarters offices, we're putting in a residency program, we have our sovereign fund. So there are multitudes of options that people can purchase to be able to suit their particular lifestyle. So for some people, being a resident and being able to pay a domicile tax rate has huge and significant benefits. Being a citizen isn't as important. For some people, being a citizen, because when they travel, they want to use a different passport, and the traveling can be in terms of access to markets or from security. I mean, so right now in the States, we're seeing a growing demand of Americans who want to have a secondary passport. So if they're traveling internationally, they're staying in a hotel, that they're giving their St. Lucian passport or giving their Dominican passport in exchange. So is it a commodity? Even if it's not a commodity, in managing it, you must manage it like a commodity. And I don't ever want to think that a country's sovereignty ought to be perceived as a commodity, but the fact is that we didn't invent this business. You know, when you look at the United States of America, go out and get the best, the richest, and the brightest to come to your country. Canada, you know, I mean, I was educated in Canada, very low population, And they were very aggressive when Hong Kong was converting back into China, and they ran a successful program. You just go to Vancouver and see the economic impact of what that was achieved. And I think the Caribbean is late into the game. I think that we're still trying to learn and create a homegrown CIP program.
Yeah.
And I think it's good that we have different islands with different programs. And St. Lucia is lucky in that it came late to the game, and I can see some of the successes and some of the failures. And hopefully people can learn from what we're doing, and it's that diversity that hopefully educates everyone.
You mentioned getting together and selling it as one program. And there are, as far as I know, 13 CARICOM states.
14.
14. They all have basically the same selling points. They have, or the same advantages. Sorry, the same advantages as the current CIPs. They have access to Schengen. They have often, not always, but often, common law jurisdictions. English as a first language in many cases. What's stopping other CARICOM nations? Why are they leaving this money on the table, do you think?
I can't answer that question. I mean, everybody's going to have to come to the realization themselves. Mm-hmm. I think that some people may have bought into the rhetoric that this is not a good thing, right. And that you're selling your sovereignty, etc. We're seeing that in most of the islands that there has been a decrease in population, and again, it depends. I mean, like for instance, with Trinidad, they had oil,
right?
So they had their own source of funding. Jamaica was within an IMF program. It's a much larger country, and probably thought it was very complicated to be able to do that. So I think they're watching us. I think that the program that we're developing with the residency and with the headquarters office will open people's eyes that it doesn't have to be a citizenship program.
You have a special announcement today here at the Investment Migration Forum 2017. I promise I won't reveal it to the world until you've announced it in a few hours from now. Can you please divulge what policy changes are coming up now in the
it's really to have announced some of the things and bring clarity to why our pricing is where it is. Talk about what we're doing with our sovereign fund. Mm-hmm. But the big one really is that we've now decided, in addition to having our citizenship donation at 100,000, that for the promoters in the business, that we're offering now a 10% commission. And again, we've decided to be very forthright so that there's no hidden secrets as to what we're doing. Mm-hmm. So once you are an established promoter with St. Lucia, yeah. That you'll be qualified to be able to get a 10% commission, and that's going to be effective of any approvals as of July 1st.
Prime Minister, thank you for taking the time.
It's a pleasure.